One more segment left for this Monday edition of Bang the Book Radio. That is the College Football First Look with Kyle Hunter of HunterSportsPicks.com. Kyle, how's it going today, man?
Going pretty good, man. What a wild weekend of college football, huh?
It was. And I got to tell you, I played, I think, 6 or 7 of the Bet Online openers, that came out last Sunday, and I missed on all 7 of them. So that tells me right there that it was a ridiculous week. It's hard to go 0-for-7 on those soft numbers. I'm pretty upset about it.
Yeah, I didn't have a very good Saturday either. I went 5-7 on the premiums. I feel like I should have done better. I liked the card, like I mentioned to you in my email. I thought it was a pretty good card, but it didn't fall right. And huge dogs cashing, huge dogs obviously winning outright, and just a wild weekend. It happens sometimes. Kind of like we've said before, don't overreact to it. And I know you had a good Sunday in the NFL, and I did as well. So that was a nice bounce back from Saturday.
I mean, we probably should have known, right? We probably should have known that last weekend in college football was going to be a disaster. Troy got beat outright. We saw Clemson and Washington State both go down on Friday the 13th. We probably should have seen this coming. I mean, I don't know what we would have done differently necessarily, but we should have seen it coming.
Yeah, there's always one of these weekends, it might happen a couple times a year, but it hadn't really happened before this. And here was the wild weekend where, all these things that you just did not see coming happen. And I don't think it's even the fact that these teams lost as far as the top 10 teams. It's how they lost. Washington State, I mean, what was that performance against Cal? I watched a decent amount of that game. That was just amazing. Luke Falk just turning the ball over nonstop. They looked terrible in that game. They didn't just lose. They looked awful. I think Clemson was probably the most excusable to me. Bryant getting injured. I still don't think they should have lost to Syracuse, obviously, but Bryant's a pretty key player for them. We've talked about how well he's done in that offense, and I'm surprised that Clemson's defense gave up as much as they did, but still, I think Clemson would have had a lot better shot if Bryant hadn't gotten injured early in that game.
Kelly Bryant shouldn't have even played in that game. I've talked a lot about Dabo Swinney here on the show, and I give him a lot of credit. I think he's a very good head coach. I think he's a great motivator of men. And, you could see it. There was that clip going around on Twitter of him telling Dino Babers after the game, hey, I'm so happy for you. That he got that huge – I mean, it's a game that Clemson can bounce back from. If they run the table, win the ACC, they're going to be in the playoff anyway. But still, I mean, the way that he handled himself in that situation was very impressive. But then you look at the way that he handled Kelly Bryant, who was clearly less than probably even 80%. He's hobbling around. He has no explosiveness, can't get out of the pocket in the face of pressure. And Syracuse just sent blitz after blitz after blitz at him. And that's exactly what they should have done. And then, of course, he has his head slammed against the turf, and that was it for his night. And his night should have been over long before that. And hopefully, there's no long-lasting carryover to what looks like a pretty awful concussion that he had. But, man, he never should have been in that game to begin with. And you could see as that game was playing out that Clemson was in serious trouble. Even if he had finished that game out, the way that he was hobbling around, he just wasn't effective. And Clemson didn't really do enough to adjust. I thought it was really disappointing that he was out there, even playing in that situation. But, there were other games. At Washington, 7 points in Tempe against the Sun Devils. Auburn getting beaten after they go up 20, after they score 23 points in the first half, nothing in the second half. Miami barely survives Georgia Tech. Strange week overall for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how Arizona State held Washington to 7 points. That one was really baffling. Certainly not an Arizona State defense that I thought very highly of going into that game. And then the other one, I have to say, mea culpa on the San Diego State call last week. San Diego State, they gave up 2 touchdowns that were non-offensive touchdowns in the first quarter. And then later in the game, Boise State kind of bullied them in the trenches. I'm really surprised San Diego State wasn't able to run. I know Boise has a decent defensive front. I was surprised that Boise could run as much as they could on San Diego State. I definitely didn't see that one coming, but it's just one of those weekends where a lot of things didn't make much sense.
And it even carried over into Sunday with Akron improving to 3-0 in the MAC by winning in Kalamazoo over Western Michigan. That was an interesting little spot because the game was postponed to Sunday because the field flooded in Kalamazoo due to some pretty heavy rains. And then, Akron just goes out and wins on Sunday, and Western Michigan didn't look very good. That was a 14-3 game through three quarters. Then Western Michigan put a rally together. So, again, just one of those weeks. You don't want to overreact too much to what you've seen. And, of course, you got to keep a proper mindset here. As we head on into Week 8, let's talk about heading into Week 8 here, Kyle. I know we like to talk about our quick hitters segment, injury news and notes, some other stuff that's popped up from last week. So what's the first point you got on that list?
Yeah, I feel like we have several good notes here for this week. Let's start with Troy. Troy, like you said, with a pretty bad loss there last week. Obviously, they had a pretty big hangover from LSU, even though they had extra week. But Jordan Chun, their running back, is questionable for this week with an arm injury. I think he had like a laceration to his arm, a pretty severe laceration to his arm. They need him in their offense for balance. This is an offense that really hasn't been as good as most people assumed they would be. Silvers needs Chun back there to be a good running threat, or else Troy is too one-dimensional. So keep an eye on that injury.
Yeah, that is a big one. I mean, they take on Georgia State this week, so at least, they've got a little bit of a respite here against a team that's not great, but also Georgia State's 2-0 here in Sun Belt play. So Sean Elliott doing a very, very good job with that program. I mean, look, this is a Troy team that I think you kind of saw sort of a really good example of why college football can be a tough sport to handicap, because we talked about on last Monday's show how Troy had that extra time, how it should be good enough for them to get over that LSU win, and it wasn't. And, they had close wins over New Mexico State and Akron right before that. So, again, I mean, you're subject to a lot of variance when you're banking on 18 to 23-year-old kids.
Yeah, definitely. And I do like, after that game, Neil Brown came out and said, hey, this was on me. I got out-coached, so that's why we lost this game. I need to have these guys ready to play. I think he's a very good young head coach, and I think Troy will be good going forward. Coastal Carolina, their top two quarterbacks are both questionable for this game against Appalachian State. Coastal Carolina is a team that hasn't been very good to start with, and they don't have their coach this season. One of their backup quarterbacks is out for the season as well. So their top two quarterbacks both questionable for this week's game. Definitely something you're going to want to keep an eye on.
Well, and of course, too, with a team like Coastal Carolina, I mean, this number is off the board for that reason here, so we don't have a number on that one to discuss here. But, also, when you make that transition from FCS to FBS, you're kind of relying on those starters because those are the closest guys you have to FBS-level players. And for Coastal Carolina, it's going to be a building process here to try and get this roster on the two deep up to FBS standards. And if they're already tapping into a lot of depth, I mean, you kind of saw it last week. They got beat 51-17, didn't do much offensively. You could see them get blown out here again this week.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And Coastal Carolina is a team that would rather run, but they get behind pretty quickly, and then, they have to try to play catch-up by passing. And if they're without some of those quarterbacks, they're going to be in trouble. As far as quarterback problems, another kind of under-the-radar one, Buffalo, Tyree Jackson has been out for a little while with an injury, their starter at the beginning of the season. Drew Anderson stepped in, played really well for them, and then got hurt last weekend at the end of the first half, I believe it was, against Northern Illinois. Anderson didn't play after halftime. Buffalo scored 0 points in the second half of that game. There were actually 0 points scored in the whole second half of that game. I had the over in that game, and I checked that one at halftime and thought I was in decent shape, and then I saw at the end of the game that they didn't score in the whole second half, and that's kind of a kick in the nuts. But, what do you do? You've got Buffalo now with a big question mark there at quarterback because, like I said, I think actually Drew Anderson was playing better than Tyree Jackson. So they had a little bit of a controversy when Jackson comes back, but now you don't even know if either one of them's going to play. And that's why there's no number here. I will say, though, also Miami on the other side of this game, Miami's Gus Ragland is not expected to play again this weekend. We talked about that one last week, and Ball is a big step down from Gus Ragland, and Miami lost outright to Kent State, so I think that proves that they really need Ragland in there.
Yeah, losing to Kent State is a really, really bad look with what's going on with Kent State here this season. Kyle Van Treese is the guy that could go this week for Buffalo if Jackson and Anderson aren't ready. He's a true freshman, 6'3", 232, so he's a big kid, but just 8 of 16 throwing in the last game and had 3 sacks in the second half, and that was his first appearance of the season. So doesn't really look like he's all that mobile of a kid. What's really interesting is that with Anderson, he was more of a thrower, and Jackson was more of a dual threat type guy. If Buffalo can get both of those guys healthy here at the same time at some point throughout the rest of the season and have packages for both of them, they're a really interesting team. I mean, they're already a team that I had severely underrated coming into the year. They've already exceeded expectations by quite a bit. They're out there. I don't know if they've gone over their season win total already or not, but I think they might have pushed it already. That's a team that's been playing really, really well. And if you get both of those guys together here for the end of the regular season, could be a very interesting team as we get some of that weeknight action going on.
Yeah, they could, definitely. And I see just as we're talking right here, the line comes up at Chris that Miami of Ohio is favored by 2.5 right now against Buffalo. Miami of Ohio at home in that one. So clearly the odds makers have downgraded Miami of Ohio quite a bit without Gus Ragland.
Yeah, I got that number Miami minus 2.5 right now without Ragland. So it's pretty much where I put it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair as well. I think I had 3, so I think that's a fair number. I wanted to say something about turnover luck. We haven't talked about this so far this year, I don't believe, and I think it's a good point to bring this up. Purdue has forced 9 fumbles and has recovered all 9 of them. That's definitely not going to keep happening, so that's something to keep in mind. On the other end, Virginia, they've fumbled the ball 13 times, and they've lost just 1 of those 13 fumbles. That's way too lucky. I think Virginia is a much better team this season, but, for both Virginia and Purdue, that's just kind of caution signs going forward.
Yeah, that's something that it's kind of a big point of contention out there. I've seen some people, make some snide comments about it. Fumble luck to me is a real thing. I mean, fumbles are generally going to fall somewhere around 50%. You're probably going to break even more often than not in the fumble category. Some teams do force more fumbles than others. That's certainly a thing. But if you've got a really lopsided ratio, like a couple of the ones that you just talked about there, that is something that should regress to the mean. I mean, interceptions are something that's going to happen. Coverage schemes are better. You've got better athletes in the secondary, whatever the case may be. But, when you talk about fumble luck, that is a real thing, and it's something that, you probably should be following along with.
Yeah, definitely. There's a big difference between, saying that there are certainly some teams that are going to take care of the ball better than other teams. I don't think either one of us would disagree with that. But once the ball's on the ground, it should be pretty close to 50-50. I mean, at that point, if you're picking up the ball every single time, it's not going to keep going. So that's what we mean by fumble luck. And, there is going to be teams, like I said, that are much better at taking care of the ball and teams that are really sloppy with the football. But, once the ball's on the ground, it should be pretty close to 50-50. I have a really good bye week system I wanted to point out here. From week 6 on, bye weeks help much less early in the season. I think that's pretty much widely known. But from week 6 on, backing teams with a win percentage of 70% or higher off a bye week, laying less than 10 points, is 84-38 against the spread, 69% in the last 122 contests. I think this is a really interesting one, and it also gets even stronger when they're facing another very good team. So another team with a 70% straight-up win percentage or higher. In that spot, it's 41-11 ATS the last 52. Look for those spots in the coming weeks. There's going to be some really good teams off bye weeks playing against other good teams. That's been a really good spot to look for in the past.
Well, that's got to be a coaching thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you get a team that has a really good coach coming off, extra time. And usually in these spots, too, the other team doesn't have extra time. So you're looking for a team that has extra time to prep, that's really good, playing against another very good team that doesn't have extra time.
Any other points in the quick hitters this week?
That's it. I know we had a couple of listener questions and had some points about that, but that's it for the quick hitters.
Yeah, so we do have a couple of listener questions here this week, both of them from @Brash Lindbergh on Twitter. If you ever have any questions for the show, please reach out on Twitter @SkatingTripods, or you can send them to Kyle as well, @KyleHunterPicks. But the question that he's got here related to the Tulane FIU game, and we'll talk about South Florida and Tulane a little bit later on in the show here. Not to go on a side note here, but FIU is 4-2 with Butch Davis. I mean, I'm stunned about that. They've been much, much better than the expectations that I had for them. But at any point, a listener asking here, he had this number off by about 9 points, wound up with FIU as a 4-point dog in his power ratings. Number was 13 or something like that, and they actually won the game by 13. So he says, what do I do with something like that? He said, yes, it's just one game, but do you look at it as an affirmation of your number or still adjust to the market? I think this is a really good question and something that I've had a little bit of difficulty with throughout the season here.
Yeah, if you played FIU and won last week because you had a 4-point line, you definitely need to adjust your line at least somewhat. I mean, it's great that FIU won that game. I will say, if you look at FIU, they have 4 wins so far this year, but who have they beaten outside of Tulane? They beat Alcorn State by 7 points, they beat Rice by 6, and they needed a big comeback to beat Charlotte by 1 point at home. So I don't think FIU's really proven that much other than this Tulane game, which I certainly didn't see coming. I think that it's a good sign that you had FIU in that game. I think that means you were probably closer than what the market was right there, or at least you were higher on FIU than most people, which was a good thing. But I still think you have to adjust to the market at least somewhat. Whether you want to be right in line with the market completely, I don't think so. I don't think you want to make that big of an adjustment, but I don't think you can not adjust when you have that big of a difference. Tulane was favored by, I believe, 13 in that game, so you're 9 points off the market. I don't think you can keep it there.
No, I mean, you can't, because if you're off by 9 points, you're certainly off on one team, and you're probably off on both teams. And that's not good, because that's 2 games that you're going to be off on the following week. And maybe, you're right on both of them. That certainly is a possibility. But still, you want to make sure that you're making a responsible adjustment to both teams here. Yeah, FIU won, and kudos to them for that. They're on a bye here this week, so, we don't have a line out for them here on any game this week. But still, then your number is probably going to be off by quite a bit in that Marshall game on the road on October 28th. And look, maybe FIU goes up there and covers, maybe they don't. But you still want a number that's reasonable relative to the rest of the market, because if you're off by that much at this stage of the game, you're going to be off week after week after week. And it's not like FIU is going to cover every week. FIU may cover the majority of the weeks, who knows. But still, you want to make sure that you're a lot closer to the market close than what your number was. I mean, yeah, you were on the right side. You got an easy winner. That's awesome. But that is something that I've done a few times this year here too, is that if a team lost by 35, but the number was off from what I closed it, I'm still going to bump them up. Because, yeah, they lost by 35, but I'm not rating that team accurately in the market. And that's a concern, because you open yourself up for some exposure that way.
Yeah, and part of the reason we're saying this is the odds makers are really good at their job. I mean, they're very good at valuing these teams, and we're looking for small edges across the board. So you can't assume that you're going to have that kind of point value on a team every single week. So, I think that's one of the large reasons that you want to adjust, is knowing that the odds makers are sharp. You don't want to have, FIU as only a dog of 10 points against a solid team going forward when the market's going to be minus 20 or, something like that on the other side. So, unless you just really love the team at FIU and you think that you have a big edge, then I think you want to adjust in a pretty big way. If you want to adjust smaller because you think FIU's better, I think that makes some sense. But you have to make some kind of adjustment.
And I think a really good example of this here, at least for my personal power ratings, is Bowling Green. Bowling Green is a team I played on last week. I had that number 5. I caught it at 10, minus 0.5, I think, against Ohio. And realistically, that's a well could have covered. They lost 48-30, but they gave up 21 points in the fourth quarter. They were only outgained by 19 yards. So from that standpoint, it's a game that probably should have been closer. But obviously I was off on that game. I mean, I was 4 points off from the closing number, 4.5 points off from the closing number, something like that. Well, then getting into this week here, I'm 4 points off again on the Bowling Green number as they take on Northern Illinois. I think it's actually 5 points off. I think I have 8.5 in my power ratings. The number is 13.5. And that's the problem that you run into, is that Bowling Green didn't cover for me last week, made a little bit of an adjustment to them. Obviously, it wasn't enough because my numbers tell me to play them again here this week. I'm not going to do it because obviously that tells me that I'm just not rating this team properly. I'm missing something, and that's not the way that it should be.
Yeah, and that's a caution sign. Just if any listeners out there have a situation like that, where you were off last week, you're off again this week, rather than just fire right away. That's something that you want to look into a little bit more. And like Adam just said right there, it would make you be hesitant to just take the same side right away.
All right, second part of the question here from Brash Lindbergh regarding power ratings is he says that I'm noticing the bottom of my ratings is gathering more and more teams. I can't get low enough. Is this normal as teams just pack it in, or am I downgrading too aggressively? And this is something that I've noticed as well. And I think, too, I'm actually a little bit too hesitant to move teams down into the 40s in my power ratings. I really should. There are some teams that I should definitely be dropping a little bit more here as we go along. But, that is the thing. I mean, at this point, I think we're just finding out that some teams are just really, really bad.
Yeah, and this is the question I really like of the two. This one, I started with one team rated below 50 in my power ratings before the season. I now have 6 rated below 50. So I definitely adjust a decent amount of teams downward. I don't know how many he's saying that he has rated really lowly, but I think it's actually a good thing to be aggressive, lowering teams at this point in the stage. And, as I was prepping for the show here last night, it's 2 a.m. and I'm running some data queries and I'm trying to test out this theory. And I just kind of looked at this. I thought, with the teams that are rated extremely lowly, you're going to have some massive spreads. So is that a good or bad thing this time of the season? From week 8 on in college football, if you blindly take favorites of 21 points or larger in conference games, they've covered 57.2% of the time in the past 10 years. Now, if you go from week 9 on, it's 59.2%, laying 21 points or more. I think that's really good support to the theory that aggressively lowering teams in power ratings this time of the year is a good idea because if you're taking favorites of 21 or bigger, that other team has to be rated really lowly. And if that's the case and you're still getting, 57.2% ATS, laying that many points, I think that just speaks volumes to the fact that you should be aggressively lowering some teams this time of the year.
Yeah, I had one team below 50 at the start of the year. It was Texas State. I've got 5 of them down there now, including Texas State. Kent State, San Jose State, Charlotte, and UTEP are the 5 that are down there for me right now. And that is one thing that I have noticed a little bit, too, is I've been paying closer attention to updating my power rating since I'm doing the article over at the website, is that I'm finding that I'm moving teams down a lot more than I'm moving teams up. Is that a similar thing for you?
Yeah, I think it's easier to move teams down. I know that it kind of seems like, being a pessimist or something, but I think it's easier to move teams down. You see a team that's just consistently underperforming where I'm kind of hesitant to move teams up really quickly unless they prove it consistently. There's, you can overrate a team pretty easily if you go off 1 or 2 weeks of good information or good data from them. And I think that, over the course of the season, you start seeing some teams that, they just are a lot worse than what we thought. Maybe the coaching staff isn't doing well. You think of a team like Georgia Southern, a team that was so good in the past under Fritz, and now Summers comes in there and they've been really bad. That's a team that I've just had to consistently downgrade week after week. You can't get low enough on a team like that for a long time. Where on the other side, I think a team has to be really consistently outperforming expectations to really jump in my power ratings. One team that's really done that in a big way is UCF. I think UCF's proven everything that they would have to prove to really jump in the power ratings. But, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's easier to downgrade teams than it is to move them up.
I was looking at this today for my power ratings article. I think I've bumped up UCF 13.5 points since the start of the year, which is, it seems ridiculous, but you can't get them high enough.
Right. I've moved UCF up 14 points from the beginning of the season, so we're almost in line there. And, UCF's just, Scott Frost, we knew he was a good coaching fit. I mean, I think both of us knew that before the season. So that's what's really amazing about this is I didn't really feel like I was trying to be low on UCF going into the season, and yet still moved him up 2 touchdowns.
All right, let's get into some of these games here. We got several games I want to touch on, and then, of course, we'll try to fit in the pick six here. Let's start Thursday night. Big one in the AAC between Memphis and Houston. Houston's a 3-point favorite with reduced juice at some places, 2.5 with extra juice at others. I got to say here, Kyle, I don't know what you've got on this game. I know the spot is atrocious for Memphis. They're coming off of a game against Navy, Service Academy team. Navy turned the ball over 5 times for Memphis to win that game. The spot is terrible, but I still feel like the wrong team is favored here.
I think it makes sense that Houston is favored by a little bit, but I don't think they should be favored by this much. And I know it's not a key number, but this is a game that I don't have strong convictions about. I have Houston -1 for this game, so I'll just tell you what my line is. I don't think I'm going to bet this game. Houston's a tough team to figure out for me. I thought their offense would be better than they are this season. I actually thought that Allen would be a good fit in their offense, and then he was pulled as their starter really quick. Postma has been okay, I guess. Had a rough game last game. The big problem for Houston is they have virtually no running game. 4.35 yards per carry so far this year, which on the surface you say 4.35 yards per carry. That's pretty decent. That's not too bad. But look at the defenses they've played. They've played Arizona, Rice, Texas Tech, Temple, who has a decent defense, SMU, and Tulsa. Some really, really bad rush defenses in there. And Houston still hasn't been able to run the football very well. Memphis has a very good offense. I know Riley Ferguson is slightly banged up, but he should play and be okay here. Memphis is a much better offense here. Now, Houston's defense I trust a lot more than Memphis's defense. Ed Oliver's back. A guy can dominate a game just about as good as anybody in college football. I think if you adjust for strength of the offenses they've played against, then Houston's defense would rank in the top, 25 in the country, where Memphis, they're not a very good defense. They give up quite a few yards. To me, this is offense versus defense. Like you said, it's not a very good spot for Memphis. Having said that, I'm not very high on Houston. Maybe I'm higher on them than you are by the sounds of things. But in this one, both teams like to play really fast. There's going to be a lot of possessions in this game. So it'll be interesting to see what the total comes out at. I think it'll be relatively high. But Houston hasn't been a very high-scoring team in general, and I think their defense is solid. So no strong lean on this one from me. It sounds like you have a stronger feeling on this game than I do.
Yeah, I got a pretty strong opinion on this game, and I actually adjusted Houston down 3 points off of that Tulsa game last week because, A, my numbers were off on them a little bit, and B, I mean, you just talked about it. Their level of competition that they've played to have the numbers that they have doesn't really impress me a whole lot. I love this Memphis team. I like them coming into the season. I love Mike Norvell. Riley Ferguson, since that game in the monsoon against Louisiana Monroe, 61.6 completion percentage, 19 passing touchdowns in the last 5 games. This Houston defense, they've only allowed 21 points per game, but they've given up 5.4 yards per play. So that's a pretty average mark to give up, I think, when you look across the country. And 21 points, it feels like there's some regression coming in that area here for Houston. I had this number, Memphis -2. If I give Houston 2 points for the spot with short week and Memphis coming off of that Navy game, then I've got this game as a pick'em. So I'll take the 3 points there on Memphis in this spot. Maybe I am a little bit too low on Houston. Like I said, I just adjusted them down to the point where my number would have been the same as yours with Houston -1 if I hadn't made that adjustment to the Cougars. So, maybe I was a little bit too aggressive with that adjustment. The short week and the bad spot is something that, may end up keeping me off of this game. But if I can get a 3 flat or a 3 reduced juice and maybe sprinkle on the money line a little bit, I think I'm happy to do that here with Memphis. I just think this is such a good football team. I know they've had a couple of fortunate wins this year, But, man, that offense is strong. The defense is on par with last year's defense. It's not like it's dropped off that much. So I think Memphis is in a pretty decent spot here from a line value standpoint. But, again, the situational spot is just so bad. One of the worst of the week for anybody.
Well, and Memphis had that one really bad game against UCF where I watched a decent amount of that game, and Memphis looked really bad there. And I remember thinking, I can't decide if Memphis isn't as good or if UCF is just really that good. Memphis has played well since then, though, 70-31 against UConn, and then the win against Navy, which is always difficult. Like I said, I'd want to make sure that Riley Ferguson is okay. I know he has a slight knee injury he's listed as probable. I would lean to Memphis in this game, but I'm not going to bet it.
All right, let's move to Friday night here. Interesting little slate of Friday night games. Western Kentucky and Old Dominion. Old Dominion starting to get a little bit healthier, so we'll see if they get a little bit better. Marshall, Middle Tennessee State is a big-time game. Air Force and Nevada, two very contrasting styles. But let's go to New Mexico here. Colorado State and New Mexico. The Lobos, a 7-dog at home here. 5 dimes out there at 7.5 minus 125. I have a hard time with both of these teams. I mean, Colorado State is a team that a lot of people liked coming into the year. Mike Bobo's done a good job with that program. New Mexico, a team that people did expect to fall off a little bit. New Mexico took heavy steam last week, closed a 2.5-point favorite at Fresno State, and got absolutely run over. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens with this game and also with the line for this game.
Yeah, I have a premium play on this game, so I'm not going to say exactly what my line is, but I'll break down reasons for each side here. First of all, New Mexico, what happened last weekend? I had the over in that game. New Mexico and Fresno State over 52.5. And Fresno State scores 38 points. You would think I was in pretty good shape. New Mexico puts up a goose egg. That one didn't make any sense to me. I will say the problem with the New Mexico team is that if they get behind by a decent amount right away, they can't throw to catch up. I mean, this is a running team. New Mexico, though, a very tricky offense to prepare for defensively. That option attack that's from the pistol is very unique. Nobody else runs an offense just like that. Colorado State's run defense isn't very good to start with. New Mexico's spread option is dangerous. So if you like New Mexico, that's why you'd like them. And then also, Bob Davie, I think, is a good coach. And coming off a blowout loss, I think they should be more prepared for this one. On the other side, Colorado State, the most balanced offense in the Mountain West. I think Colorado State's going to torch a lot of teams on defense in the Mountain West. They did it at the end of last year. They're doing it again here this season. This is just a really good offense. Gallup at wide receiver, one of the best receivers in the country. Stevens has been really good. They have several running backs who are pretty solid. Colorado State, I believe, ran for over 400 yards against New Mexico last year. Only threw the ball 10 times. And I think that they could throw the ball pretty easily on New Mexico as well. So I think Colorado State's going to score here. I assume New Mexico can score quite a bit here as well. Like I said, I've already played the side. I like the over as well. I think this is going to be a pretty high-scoring game.
I think it's so difficult because you've got this Colorado State that, at the early part of the year, we really didn't know what to think about them. I mean, that loss to Colorado doesn't look all that great now because Colorado has struggled. They played pretty well against Alabama. You got to give them credit for that. Great spot for Alabama. They weren't too invested in that game. But went out to the island and won in a tough spot, beat Utah State in a tough spot coming back off the island game. And then last week had some issues with Nevada, but Nevada's kind of getting that air raid going a little bit here with Ty Gangi or Ganji, whatever it is, at quarterback. They're playing a little bit better on offense. Gave up 44 points, and Gallup had a huge game, as you mentioned. So for Colorado State here, I mean, they're comfortable outscoring teams. It's something you don't really have a problem with. I've got this number, Colorado State minus 10, so I got a little bit of value on the Rams here in this one, but it's actually a good one, and it's a really underrated Friday night card, to be sure. And we'll touch on that Marshall Middle Tennessee game here once we get into the Pick 6 segment. All right, let's go out to the Pac-12 for Saturday's action. Mid-afternoon kickoff here between Arizona State and Utah. Out in Salt Lake City, 3:30 kick. You don't get a whole lot of day games here for Utah when they're taking on opponents that bring some intrigue to the table like Arizona State. Obviously, it's a horrible spot for Arizona State coming off the Washington win. Utah coming off of a close loss to USC. A tough game to handicap all around, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say it's definitely a bad spot for Arizona State, but is it really a good spot for Utah either? They have to be disappointed after last week. I was really impressed with Utah's performance last week. And like I said, I'm still not sure how Arizona State stopped Washington. I know Arizona State's defense isn't good, so I don't want to make too much of that game. And on the other side, Arizona State's offense. You think of them as a pretty prolific offense. They haven't really been as good as you would think this year, especially running football. Arizona State is second to last in the country in yards per carry at 2.81 per carry. To me, that's a big problem against this Utah team because Utah's defensive front is about as good as anybody in the country. I mean, Utah may have some issues in their defense, but their defensive line is not a problem. They're very good. And I think if you're completely one-dimensional against them, Utah is going to get a lot of pressure on the quarterback here. So I see that as a major problem for Arizona State. Having said that, I don't think there's any great line value to be had in this, with the spread being what it is. And I'd want to know if Huntley could come back for this one also. I think he's still listed as questionable, and we've talked about him before. I think he means a lot to this Utah offense. He really helps them a lot with the dual threat. If he plays, I could see laying the points here. If he doesn't play, I wouldn't want to lay this many points. I still don't think Arizona State's that great of a team. Had to upgrade them some, but I didn't want to overrate them too much from 1 week. And Utah's a team that I don't like going against at home very often either.
You hear about this game for me. I think take Arizona State out of the handicap because, like you said, I mean, they're not as good as their performance last week. I give them a lot of credit for it. They have been improving. They, won that game over Oregon, but, as we know, Oregon's not a particularly strong team at this point in time. I think this handicap is solely about Utah. I think it's all about how you view the Utes in this spot. Now, last week, they gave up a 16-play, 98-yard touchdown drive in the third quarter, an 11-play, 88-yard drive to start the fourth quarter, and an 11-play, 93-yard drive about midway through the fourth quarter. That is not Utah football. They do not get moved on like that. They're always physical. They're very strong at the point of attack. You don't see sustained, long scoring drives against the Utes. And I think that is a direct correlation to playing a physical game against Stanford the week before. We talk about playing these service academy teams. We talk about playing these teams that run the power running style. That's something that has a carryover, not just the following week, but can have a carryover in subsequent weeks as well. USC is still a pretty physical team, and they just wore Utah down in the second half of this game. And now I kind of wonder, how will Utah fare against a team that's not going to body up with them, not going to play physical with them in Arizona State? So that's the question that I have. This is a much better team schematically for Utah to play. Can they rally? Can they bounce back? Look, that game could have gone to overtime last week. Kyle Whittingham opted to go for 2. It was a shit show of a play. They didn't get there. That game could have gone to overtime, and who knows what happens with Utah. So Utah, for me, is the sole focus in this handicap. And if the line, gives me value, if I feel like Utah is going to be able to do what it wants to do, and, of course, if Tyler Huntley comes back, it's Utes or nothing for me in this spot.
Yeah, me as well. I can't take Arizona State in this spot. No way. I wouldn't want to lay a bunch of points. I think that Utah's we pretty much know what Utah is if Huntley's in the game. They're a solid team. They're pretty good on offense with him. Defensively, they're pretty good at stopping the run. A little bit weak in the secondary, but I don't know that Arizona State can take advantage of that well enough. Like I said, I wouldn't want to lay a lot of points here, but it would be Utah or nothing for me. And then just as an aside, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts, Adam, are. What do you think about the going for 2 there from Whittingham at the end of last game?
I like it, honestly. I mean, you're in there as a big-time dog. You got a chance to knock off a top 15 team. You've got a chance to, improve to 5-1 here as well. Do you really want to take your chances in overtime when I just talked about it, 98, 88, and 93-yard scoring drives for the Trojans in the second half? I mean, I don't think that your defense is going to hold up in overtime. You have 530 yards. You might as well take your shot there and go for it. It just would have been nice to see a different play call that actually gave them a chance.
Yeah, I think this was one of the few instances where I liked it. Usually I wouldn't do that. You hate to lose a game that way. But in this case, I agree with you because Utah was really worn down. I think Whittingham knew that, their defense was just getting worn down drive after drive, and they were on the field so much there in the second half. I think it made some sense. It didn't work out right, but it's easy to say that after the fact.
And you and I talk about this a lot, and we probably don't talk about it enough, but that cat can coach, man. Kyle Whittingham is so good.
Yeah.
All right, one more to talk here, and then we'll get – go ahead.
I was just going to say, absolutely. He's a very good coach. And actually, one thing I had in my notes from earlier was just that I wanted to mention again how bad Jim Mora is as a coach. I feel like, this was another week to say it. One thing I wanted to say is just that, I was thinking about Jim Mora here the other night when it was the Arizona game, and I thought, maybe we should just wait until Jim Mora gets a decent quarterback because he just probably needs a quarterback, and then he'll be solid. But oh wait, never mind. He actually has a good quarterback. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say about Jim Mora anymore. And then I thought maybe we could rag on Butch Jones a little bit, but it almost feels like piling on him at this point. I don't even know what to say.
I'm totally fine with going after Jim Mora and Butch Jones. I mean, someone needs to take Butch Jones out back and just put him out of his misery at this point. And you know who's going to do it this week is Nick Saban when Alabama hangs like 55 or 60 on Tennessee. And then it's going to be the world's most obvious fire on – I don't even know if they'll wait till Monday. They'll probably just do it on Sunday. They might even not let him on the plane. I don't know. But Alabama's going to put the final nail there in that Butch Jones coffin. And I'll be curious to see what happens with UCLA. I mean, if UCLA looks bad this week against an Oregon team that's just in complete disarray with all their injuries right now, I mean, I don't know how Jim Mora can last the season, to be completely honest with you. So that'll be something to keep a close eye on here as we go throughout the rest of the season. Let's go to game 377-378. South Florida takes on Tulane. South Florida up to an 11.5-point favorite here. Had a listener request to talk about this game. We touched on Tulane a little bit earlier in terms of one of our listeners having a pretty big disparity in the numbers for Tulane. This is a really difficult thing to try and figure out because I think Tulane, even though you're a program that has a lot of, that was a massive ahead spot for them at FIU. And, Tulane didn't have look-ahead spots, but that was one of them. They're not as bad as they played last week. And now they take on a Florida team that, I still feel like I don't know what I'm going to get from the Bulls each week.
Yeah, I think this is I have this number at 11. So I have no strong opinion when it comes to the number. However, my lean would be, based on the matchups, I would lean towards South Florida. This South Florida defense is 6th in the nation in yards per play allowed. Strong is definitely helping them there. I figured he would. They didn't start out playing great on defense. They've been a lot better here lately. Still, Tulane's certainly a unique attack for them to be ready to defend. I assume they'll do pretty well against it. Tulane coming off that really surprising loss. My problem with Tulane here, Tulane's 117th in the nation in yards per play allowed at 6.46. Tulane, I don't see how they get stops in this game. Are they really going to be able to stop USF? Flowers is still a really good quarterback. Their offense has gotten going better here. They're not as good as they were last year offensively, but they're still good offensively. I think USF's going to be able to score quite a few points here. And then the problem for Tulane is if they get behind, they're not a passing team. This is a team that has to run the football. So even though my number is just a little bit lower than this, my slight lean would be USF. I couldn't take Tulane here. I think it's a tough matchup.
Yeah, my number is 9 on this game because I've really respected what Tulane has done here. I think what really set me off on them was that close loss to Navy where, they're playing against another triple option team. a team that's had the option for longer, a team that's better at running it, more efficient at running it, and they hung right in that game on the road. So I gave them a lot of credit for that. For South Florida here, Darius Tice and Dearness Johnson, who are replacing Marlon Mack, both of them were in walking boots a couple of weeks ago. Now they're pretty much back to normal, so that enhances this South Florida rushing attack. South Florida, Charlie Strong walked into a really great situation, but they were still changing schemes. He had a ton of talent. They had to morph, the playbook into this talent. It takes time to do that generally, and so the slow start to the year a little bit didn't really bother me that much. Now I'm just wondering how much I want to increase this team's power rating because they just look really, really good right now. Now you said the perfect things there about Tulane. If they get behind, they can't throw the football, and they're probably going to get behind in this game because defensively, it's hard for them. Now, I will say this. When you get a matchup like this with a service academy against another team, and this is something you can kind of look at as well with Air Force, I should say with a triple option team. When you get a team like Air Force, for example, against Nevada, it's all about the opponent's efficiency level because, you're going to have a limited number of possessions. The team that runs the option should, in theory, control the time of possession. So for South Florida here, how efficient are they on offense? Can they maximize their lower number of possessions? The answer here is yes. For Nevada on Friday night, we don't really know. We're not entirely sure because they're going to that air raid scheme. So that's one thing that you need to look at in these triple option games is that, can the team that's facing the triple option not just defend it, but also be efficient with a limited number of possessions? And I think that's where South Florida does have a big edge here.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier as far as Nevada with the other game there. Nevada's offense has been a lot better with Ganji in there. So Nevada's a team that you definitely shouldn't be extremely low on now. I think that's a team that everybody should be upgrading in their power ratings at least somewhat. I'm not saying Nevada's a great team, but they've been much better when Ganji's been in the game. So, in this spot, as far as Tulane, I think Tulane will get their yards against USF. I think USF is going to be pretty consistently efficient on offense to where it's hard for Tulane to keep up.
All right, let's get through our Pick Six segment here. 6 games, rapid-fire fashion. We'll start Friday night. Marshall at Middle Tennessee State. Marshall's down to a 2.5-point favorite across the market here, as we've seen a little bit of Middle Tennessee love this week.
Yeah, I'll definitely take Marshall here. I do like this one. I've been high on Marshall all year. I wish I'd played them more times than I have. I took them over the season win total at 5, which obviously is going to be fine. I just think Marshall's still underrated. Marshall has a really good defense. They're the best defense in the conference by a lot. Middle Tennessee, Richie James came back last weekend, but Stockstill's still out, and I think he's doubtful for this one. Unless he plays, I like Marshall in this one.
I like Middle Tennessee in this spot. You look at Middle Tennessee State on the year, plus 0.6 yards per play, offense versus defense. So they have been a little bit unlucky. Big reason why is because they've turned the football over a ton. That's the problem with not having Brett Stockstill. But, if their turnover luck does regress a little bit here, if some DBs start dropping picks, if fumbles bounce their way, Middle Tennessee State's a play-on team, and I think you can see that in the yards per play difference. So I do Middle Tennessee State. For those that want a little bit more information about this game, I did write up that preview here early in the early hours of the morning over at BangTheBook.com. Let's go to Saturday, the first game on the board. Game 315, 316, Iowa takes on Northwestern. This number is kind of all over the place between pick and 1.5, so we'll say Northwestern -1.
First of all, I think it's kind of nice when we disagree on a game. I know we agree more than we disagree, so it's nice for us to have a good disagreement there on the Marshall and TSU game. So we'll see who gets bragging rights for next week. Iowa Northwestern, this is not one I feel very strongly about. Northwestern, I should have played them last weekend. I'm really kicking myself for not playing that. That line was not where it should have been. I knew Northwestern was better than what they'd played. I was afraid to overreact to what I saw the last week from Maryland and how bad they were against Ohio State. Ended up passing on that one and shouldn't have. I'm going to take Northwestern in this one for the purposes of this segment, but I'm not going to play it personally.
I like Northwestern here in this spot. I mean, Iowa should have lost to Iowa State, who Iowa State's a rapid riser. If you follow Bill Connolly's S&P metrics, Iowa State's well up there. Campbell, he's doing a phenomenal job. Iowa had that close loss to Penn State, had that close loss to Michigan State. I think they're kind of living on reputation as, being this team that can play close games against better teams. I think Northwestern's a better team, and I think just getting the one there, I've got this game actually lined at Northwestern -4.5. So I like the Wildcats here in this spot. I think people kind of sold some of their Wildcats stock because they had a lot of helium coming into the year. People were saying, hey, if somebody can challenge Wisconsin in the Big Ten West, it's Northwestern. They've not lived up to those expectations. I think people have sold them a little bit prematurely here. All right, let's go to, why don't we just slide down a little bit here. This is a really interesting game, very interesting line movement. North Texas is getting 3.5 on the road at Florida Atlantic. North Texas is not in a good spot here at all, but the market doesn't seem to care because this number opened 6.5. It's done nothing but come down.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of this one. I'll hesitantly take Florida Atlantic. I'd be more interested in taking the over if the number's right. North Texas is much improved. I think Littrell's done a really good job with that team. But Florida Atlantic coming off a bye, you would think they'd be ready to play in this one. So I'll lean to Florida Atlantic here, but nothing strong.
I don't know what's going on in this game. If you watched some of that North Texas game, and I went back and watched some of it, and I saw the final play, Mason Fine got his ass kicked in this game. What a warrior that kid is to go out here and win this game for North Texas. Huge win for this program. They're 2 games away from getting to a bowl for the second straight year. They made it as a 5-7 team last year due to APR scores. But I can't think that he's in any decent shape to play this game here this week against Florida Atlantic. I get the line move. I understand it. North Texas is a team that's rising in power ratings. But, man, coming off of that game where Fine took such a beating, I got to go with Florida Atlantic here in this spot. Let's go down to game 351, 352 here. Wake Forest getting a touchdown on the road against Georgia Tech.
I'll take Wake Forest. I think this is a relatively low-scoring game. I don't trust Georgia Tech laying points very often, especially a touchdown or more. So I'm going to take a team that I think has a defense that's at least as good as the other team and grab the 7 points in what should be a low-scoring environment. So I'll take Wake Forest.
I think that makes a lot of sense. That's the way that I was looking to go with this game here, too. Also, a really tough loss for Georgia Tech last week. They got to try to bounce back, and then they go to Clemson the following week. Virginia's not a gimme game anymore. They host Virginia Tech. For Wake Forest here, coming off of some extra prep time, played Florida State tough, played Clemson tough. Those were 2 games where they were at an athleticism disadvantage. I think that's negated a little bit here in this game against triple option. So I think Wake Forest does stack up pretty well in this spot. I would look to take the line value there with them, and that number has come down from 8.5 to 7. Big game in prime time, 355, 356, Michigan getting 10 in Happy Valley against Penn State.
I'm really looking forward to watching this game, first of all, but I'm going to take Penn State and lay the 10. I wouldn't do this very often. I think Penn State's just a very consistent team, very balanced on both sides of the ball. I don't trust Michigan to be able to score enough points here. I don't really want to lay 10. If it was less than 10, I'd like it a decent amount. But I think Penn State's just better in every aspect of the game, so I'll take Penn State.
There were 9.5s yesterday at Pinnacle. They're up to 10 now. I like Penn State in this spot, too. My numbers actually have this game 14.5, and I've really soured on Michigan here lately. I know their defense is really good, and I know that this is a game that they're going to get up for, but offensively, they're kind of a mess. And Penn State's going to get theirs on offense. They just have too many playmakers, too many skill guys. If Penn State gets into the upper 20s here in this spot, I don't think Michigan can compete with a scoring environment like that. So I'd look to lay it here. I would sit and wait and see if a 9.5 pops again because I think it's certainly a possibility. You got 10 reduced juice at BetOnline right now. I think Penn State's the side here in this game, but we'll see how this one plays out. One more here in the Pick 6. We'll go to game 401, 402 on the board. Notre Dame, 3.5-point home favorite in South Bend against Southern Cal.
I think this is a good spot for Notre Dame. I've had to lower Southern Cal a little bit here the last couple weeks. I'll take Notre Dame. I don't know if I love this one, but, I think Notre Dame's quite a bit better this season. They're coming off a bye week. USC off a really tough game. I think it's a better spot for Notre Dame.
I think so, too. My raw number on this game is 1, but the spot for USC, the long travel coupled with Notre Dame on extra rest, probably makes Notre Dame more of a 2.5-point favorite for me here. So it's probably a no play. but I certainly understand, looking at the Notre Dame side, because like you said, I mean, they have been a pretty decent team here throughout the year. Brandon Wimbush seems like a really good fit for that offense. So there's the Pick Six segment. One more item of business to take care of here. That is, we'll kick the extra point with Kyle Hunter's exclusive free pick for our show listeners.
Yeah, I have to say two things. First of all, thank you for not giving me the BYU and East Carolina game in the Pick Six. I kind of had that one circled as the one that you would pick for the shitty one that I had no idea what to pick. I'm not going to lay points with BYU, but I don't want to take East Carolina. Gosh, such a horrible game. And then second of all, I'm kind of pissed off at the fact that the line moved pretty big on my free pick that I was going to give. I'm going to go ahead and give it. I hope it comes back to the number. I still like it at what it's at now, but I like Miami here against Syracuse this week. I think Syracuse, coming off that really big upset win over Clemson, is going to get enough love that this number is, a solid value. I think Miami has been a good team all throughout the season. They've had to come back and win the last couple of games. I think Mark Richt can have his team ready to play because he can point out, we have to be more consistent from the start of the game. So now it's 14.5, 15. I still like it. My number was 17.5 here, so I like Miami this week.
I mean, if you want, we can go back and start the Pick Six over again. We can do Georgia Southern and UMass and Idaho, Missouri. We can start that whole thing over again if you want. But Kyle Hunter of HunterSportsPicks.com. What's going on over at the website right now, man?
The newsletter is the first thing I want to mention. 56 and 25 the last 81 free plays. I've had a lot of people thanking me for how those have been going. I'm not going to keep winning 56 and 25 in the next 81, so don't expect that. Certainly love that they've been winning so well, but sign up for that at HunterSportsPicks.com. The other thing is I have a Sharp Money Report that goes out every Friday. Only $69 now for the rest of the season. Sharp public splits, breakdowns of where the money's going every single Friday for both college football and the NFL. If you're interested in that, message me on Twitter at Kyle Hunter Picks or email me, Kyle at HunterSportsPicks.com.
That's a nice price on that, sir. Kyle Hunter of HunterSportsPicks.com. Thank you so much for joining us, man. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right. Thanks, man.